the dying embers of human existence, as the asteroid, a behemoth the size of Texas, hurtles relentlessly toward Earth, the world braces for an apocalyptic end. Deep beneath the bunker, a refuge plunges into the bowels of the Earth. Here the chosen gather, their purpose clear, to preserve the very soul of our civilization. The 35 and 70 millimeter prints that encapsulate the magic, the emotion, and the dreams of generations past. These masterpieces, each frame a testament to the human spirit, are carefully cataloged and cradled in the cavernous confines of the bunker. Perhaps there was room for more, for friends and family yearning for salvation, but sacrifices must be made. The movie nerds stand united, the keepers of a flame, promising a future where the art of storytelling endures, transcending the boundaries of time and space. God help us all.
Welcome to Back to the Framerate, part of the Weston Media Podcast Network. Join us as we watch and discuss films on VOD and streaming platforms, deliberating on whether each one is worthy of salvation or destined for destruction in the face of the impending asteroid apocalypse. You can find more episodes of this podcast on backtotheframerate.com, where you can subscribe and share our show, and find us on our socials at Back to the Framerate. I am Nathan Schur, and accompanying me are the extraordinary movie mavens, Brianna Butterworth, Sam Cole, and returning once again, you may remember him from our Temple of Doom episode just a couple weeks ago, Anthony Ambrosino. He is, yay, Anthony, and I lost it all here. Anthony is back on his own free will and not under the spell of the Kali's blood. We promise you that. His films have premiered at top festivals like Toronto and Los Angeles film festivals, earning several awards and worldwide distribution through companies such as IFC, Showtime Networks, and HBO. Welcome back, Anthony.
Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you back. So, how is everybody doing tonight?
So far, so good. How are you?
All right. I'm feeling good. Doing good.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say the juice is loose. I don't know.
We have a good episode tonight. It's going to be kind of a simple, quick show. We are basically just going to be doing our review of this film tonight. No recommendations, but I think we're going to have a great discussion here because Anthony is back here for more than just the reason of being a guest. He's here because you have some personal connection with this film, as I understand. Yes?
Yes, I do. Very, very close to my heart. Yes, very early in my career, I was lucky enough to be a production assistant on the New Haven unit.
Should I mention that the film we are discussing tonight is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? I have not mentioned it yet, but
maybe you should.
Yes, I don't know. That might turn off people. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it is in the title and in the show notes of this. We're going to get to a few of your experiences on this film in a few moments, but I do have a question I want to ask each of you. Anthony, you weren't around a couple weeks ago you were around a few weeks ago, but I didn't have an opportunity to ask something that I ask usually all the hosts here, but it was a really truncated intro. So welcome to Storage Wars Kingdom of the Crystal Skull Edition. This is the scenario that I really want to ask all of you. All right. You stumble upon a massive, heavily chained crate deep in the warehouse. It's glowing faintly, vibrating, and you hear eerie whispers in an ancient language. The auctioneer hints that this crate may contain something far more powerful than the crystal skull itself. Maybe a lost artifact or a cursed relic or something beyond our world. The bidding starts now. What is your opening bid? And more importantly, what wild and over-the-top item do you think is hidden inside?
How many bidders are in the room?
Well, it's the three of you.
Oh, that's just us. I'm in trouble. Sam's got a lot of money.
I'm skeptical. I don't know what's in there. I mean, I don't want to, if I bid something and it's just like some hokey ghost voice, if it's the crystal skull itself, I suppose it's not, but if it's related to it in any way and it has those manipulative mind powers, that's worth, $500 maybe.
Give me a bid. Let's not waste time here. B, I'm going to go to you first. Give me a bid.
Yeah. So I'm thinking the artifact that's in there is the Ark, because I saw this movie. And do you guys remember the Bank of Zamunda from Coming to America? I'm very wealthy at the Bank of Zamunda. So I'm going 5 million Zamundan bucks for what I assume is the Ark.
Okay. All right.
Then go 5,000,001 Zamunda bucks.
5,000,001.
It's a famous tax haven. I don't know if you knew that.
And you can guess that there's different objects in this crate. So, but
okay.
Sam.
5,000,002 Zamundan bucks.
I don't know if they're called Zamundan bucks. We knew he was the richest.
All right. So you all believe that the Ark of the Covenant is in this crate. But inside the crate, you uncover the invisibility tofu. This unassuming block of tofu is said to have been blessed by a mischievous spirit, granting anyone who eats it the power of invisibility, but only while doing mundane tasks like grocery shopping or folding laundry.
Sounds amazing. Yeah. I would give 5,000,003.
I do make a mean tofu parmesan. Can I do that with this tofu?
You could. It's very expensive. But legend has it that the original owner used to sneak into forbidden feasts, but the power only activates when you yell tofu power.
Is this a Studio Ghibli movie? Should be one of the rides.
You can see why the government wants us locked away.
Sure.
Anyway.
Feels like a Mad Libs script.
Sam.
Well, Sam, you're the official owner.
You're the high bidder of this.
Hey, Sam, can I borrow some tofu?
I don't think I've ever had tofu. I hope it's good. I don't know.
Really?
What is tofu?
It's just soy. It's just like block of soy. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty bland, but it takes on the flavor of whatever you cook it with. It's nice.
Cool.
Yeah, you might like it. I had some for lunch. Nice.
Yeah. So what am I? Yeah. So I'm supposed to bid more, like?
No, you won.
No,
you won.
Yay!
I was just trying to mooch off you.
Yeah. Oh, go do my laundry while no one can see it.
As you can tell, we watched and we're going to discuss Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And let's get back to Anthony after our little segue here. Anthony, you, as you mentioned before, you have some experience working on the set of this film. I don't know if you wanted to tell us a little bit more about your experiences on this, or as we discuss this, but
absolutely.
What was your involvement?
I was a production assistant, glorified, crowd wrangler, extras wrangler.
We've all been there.
I was one of 44 PAs on the first unit alone. Crazy. We were there for almost 2 weeks in New Haven.
May I ask, how did you get the gig?
They were just searching for people. I heard from other PAs that they were looking for people. And then I got people on as well. This is, It's like Christmas time. You get to call. I felt Ebenezer Scrooge giving out money and ducks and stuff at Christmas, because I could call friends and be like, do you want to work on the new Indiana Jones? It was like yelling out the window, you boy, come down to the set. It was great. So I brought a lot of, and it was great having like friends on, like looking across the street. They were like actors that I like pretended that they had done this stuff before, just so they could be a PA on this. So it was the New Haven set.
The local? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Was this like, I don't know if this was like the New York locations in the film?
Yeah, all the college, all the Jones stuff, the high-speed chase with the Russians, which I came this close to having to stop personally yell over the radio, and that was a nightmare. So actually, I'll tell you that story right away. We're doing a lockup for this chase. It was down blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks as far as you could see. And I was responsible for my own corner. And it was unfortunately for the production and unfortunately for the students, it was the tour week when the parents show up and everyone tours the university. So these large groups of families waiting to get around the college campus. And so they're held up. And, you talk to them, you try and be jovial with them so that they don't get too annoyed. And, they get to see this high-speed chase happening with the bus and all that. So but the cars are moving at quite a speed. It is dangerous. So all of a sudden I see someone making their way through my crowd, coming to the front. And I'm like, oh, no. And this guy starts yelling at me that he doesn't care what's going on. He's going to cross the street. It doesn't matter. He's the groom in a wedding that's happening in the church across the street.
Oh, God.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm telling him, like, it's unsafe. You can't, blah, blah, blah. And he's telling me he's going to do it. And it was this whole, like, kind of standoff. We're just trying to be friendly. And I came this close to having to call over the radio to call off the shot because this guy was going to be in the road. And thank God something prevailed in his head and he decided that he would wait for the shot.
Oh my God.
I was freaking out, like, because I can't let the guy die, but but you don't want to be the lowest on the totem pole telling Steven Spielberg, well, not, at least his AD anyway. That
you should have just yelled cut over the radio. That's what you needed to do.
Was it your story, Anthony, that I don't know if it's you or someone else where there was another situation like that where there was not you, but there was something happening on the perimeter that was like where the lockdown was in question and Spielberg himself walked right up to you guys and was like, are we good? Was that, did you tell me that story? Okay.
Not me.
I don't know who that was then, but
I got my Spielberg moment was he came up to a guardrail and said hi to us. And I was pretty excited that he said hi. And there were all these girls very giddy. And I'm like, oh, you guys must be pretty excited about Harrison Ford. And they're like, oh, no, we're here for Shia. I was like, uh-oh. Forgetting. But I would say that this movie is the closest I've ever come to time travel. There was one moment, that same chase scene, where I just happened to be the very last crew member to step off before we rolled. And I just stopped and looked around, and just everywhere I looked was the 50s, between the cars and the women with the baby carriages and all the extras and the storefronts. And just no matter where I looked, it was the 50s, and it was so cool. And I feel like that's what time travel must somewhat feel like. And that was very cool.
Amazing.
But I was there when Shia LaBeouf's stunt double chopped his finger off. When they pitched the motorcycle through the library, and they slid under the table, which was actually filmed in a cafeteria. But he slid under the tables, but the stunt
looks great. I love that scene.
It was great. It's practical effects. You know, when they do practical.
And the stunt man lost his finger on that?
Yeah, his pinky got chopped off when they pitched the bike under the tables, and they had it in a cup. Shit. Like they ran him out the door, then someone carrying a cup was behind them, and then they had to get another van.
This is going to sound sarcastic, but I genuinely had this thought while I was writing some notes for this movie today that I see so many parallels between this series and our Mad Max series. And now, I mean, come on. Guy chopped his finger off doing a motorcycle stunt. It's all coming together.
The Teamsters accidentally locked the keys in the van with it running that was going to take him to the hospital. So they called for another van to come behind that. And then, so the last two things I'll tell you is like, a really exciting moment for me is they had all of us under a big tent on our last day outside. And like I said, there was 44 of us in the first unit. They were keeping 14 of us to go inside to work with the actors and continue on. And just holding my breath, like waiting, like hoping they call my name. And they did, and it was awesome. And that was really fun inside, except for I went to swap some batteries out, and I walked behind just a frame. And Harrison Ford's back there, and he's like icing both of his knees. And I was like, oh, it's my childhood hero. He's looking real old. It's like just seeing him like that with ice on his knees. I was just like, you just see, your heroes aging.
Never meet your heroes, they say, you know?
Yeah. But no, Spielberg was super friendly to everyone, and the set was one of the best run I've ever been on. Harrison Ford was cool, just very like aloof. He just kind of did his own thing. And George Lucas just kind of walked around. He didn't really talk to any of us. And then the last story I'll tell is it's the biggest career mistake I ever made was we're wrapping up New Haven, and my boss, Maddie, came over and he's like, hey, we're going to Hawaii next. Obviously, we can't, travel you out there or anything, but if you can get yourself there, we'd love to hire you as a local. And this was very early in my career, and I thought these opportunities were going to come around all the time. So I went home and I kind of did the math, and I'm like, oh, geez, I'll barely break even. And I didn't do it. And it's the biggest regret of my life is I could have gone, because this crew worked. They all worked together on all these different shows, and to have gotten in with all of them would have been really exciting. I remember they were all going to see Transformers that was coming out because they had all worked on Transformers together. That was cool. Yep. But it was a great set to work on, lots of fun, and just watching the masters at work and how even on a set that size, how smooth it ran and how happy everyone was to be there. And it was like a lot different than a lot of the other big sets I had been on.
That's
everyone was really
so cool.
Happy and kind.
Did you have firsthand experience seeing cinematographer Kaminsky work? Because I'm a big fan of his work.
Yeah, but nothing that I could really, he blows out his windows and all that, but nothing that it was a strong takeaway. The only thing that I took from this set to any of my sets were sometimes people complain when a shot is done and you want to do wild lines. It's like people hem and haw about it. It's a big deal. And I'm watching there, they film the shot, and then all of a sudden Harrison Ford sits down, the sound guys come over, and they're doing wild lines with Harrison Ford. So from that moment on any set I was on, I'm like, listen, if Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford can take the 2 minutes after this shot to get wild lines to save them from doing ADR later, then we can on this low budget, small film here, if they can. So that was a big takeaway that I took to my sets after that.
Interesting.
Wild lines.
I'll simply say that I completely understand the regret of not going to Hawaii. However, I think you have a very impressive career, and it's ongoing. There's more to your story, and it continues. So I just see that as a bump in the road, but not a huge pitfall. It's just a live and learn experience. And if I was in your situation, I probably would have done the same thing. So
thank you, Sam. I appreciate that.
I agree. We've all made choices like that. And I had many opportunities. I lived in LA for 3 years, and the things that I said no to because just didn't seem to make sense at the time. And I've kicked myself countless times of the career that I could have had.
Yeah.
But you never know. You never know.
Never know. But I could have fell in a volcano. Right. I wouldn't be here right now.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now you're on this podcast, the pinnacle of success. So let's get to our discussion of this film. I have a plot synopsis I will read here, and then we'll get to the trailer. And once I find it here, oiled machine. Here he is. It is the height of the Cold War, and famous archaeologist Indiana Jones, returning from his latest adventure, finds out his job at Marshall College is in jeopardy. He meets Mutt, a young man who wants Indy to help him find the legend of the crystal skull of Akator. And the pair set out for Peru. However, deadly agent Irina Spalko is searching for the powerful artifact too, because the Soviets believe it can help them conquer the world. Here is a clip from the trailer.
Legend says that a crystal skull was stolen from a mythical lost city in the Amazon. Whoever returns the skull to the city temple will be given control over its power.
You will help us find it.
Put your hands down, will you? You're embarrassing us.
Grab one. Go get something else. Grab the snake!
Damn, I thought that was closer.
Get on!
Come on, genius.
far ahead.
I think I'd cover my ears if I were you. You're a teacher? Part-time.
All right. A little bit of the trailer from this film. Let's get into some movie facts. Sam, what have you got for us?
So, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a 2008 American action-adventure film directed by Steven Spielberg from a screenplay by David Koepp, who I believe has collaborated with Spielberg a few times. Did he write Jurassic Park? I'm actually asking that question.
Yes. And he has
the screenplay, yeah.
Yeah, laundry list of things. I think he did the second one too.
And so this is based on a story by George Lucas and Jeff Nathanson. It's the fourth installment in the Indiana Jones film series and a sequel to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Set in 1957, we just heard the plot synopsis. So this was produced by Frank Marshall. This stars Harrison Ford, Cate Blanchett, Karen Allen returning, Ray Winstone in the most irritating role of all time, but I'll get to that later. I'll keep my opinion to myself. John Hurt, Jim Broadbent, whom I'm a huge fan of. I shout out to Jim Broadbent in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. He's amazing in those films. Shia LaBeouf. Cinematography by Janusz Kaminski, who, fun fact, Spielberg and Kaminski sat down and they watched Raiders, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade to try to capture the look of Douglas Slocum cinematography, because Spielberg wanted this film to be a blood brother to the other films, as opposed to, looking and feeling very different. Edited by Michael Kahn, music, of course, by John Williams. This actually, I believe, so the budget on this is, time has passed, big budget of $185 million in 2008. But the box office, I think the box office is $786.6 million worldwide. I believe this was the most financially, the largest, and inflation included, obviously, but the largest financial success of all the Indiana Jones films. If you take into account, there's so many factors. I'm just talking about standalone numbers. Interestingly enough, Jeb Stewart, Jeffrey Boehm, who wrote The Last Crusade, and Frank Darabont all had a crack at the script before Koepp's script satisfied the producers. This film, Lucas's idea was to, accounting for the age appropriateness of Harrison Ford, this was set in the 50s, but what they tried to do with this film is move it into the realm of a sci-fi B picture along of the sort of paranoid 1950s science fiction movies and sort of move it into that genre. So that's what they did there. This was the last Indiana Jones film to be distributed by Paramount. They shot in Connecticut, where Anthony was, Hawaii, and New Mexico. And then they didn't go to stages in London this time. I think they shot on sound stages in LA for a lot of the sets. And that, feel free to add anything, guys. That's kind of the what I got here at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention, well, you already mentioned it, but this budget and box office return, it is impressive, the box office. But I think if you kind of look at the return on investment for that budget, I don't know if it's the most successful when you consider how much they spent on this. Raiders was like 18 or 20 million, and you look at how much that made, and including the three original movies had a really low budget.
It's not even close. It's just in terms of the highest grossing Indiana Jones film, accounting for inflation. But in terms of success, probably not at all, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And again, this came out Memorial Day weekend. I think Raiders is the only one of all the movies in this franchise that did not come out on Memorial Day weekend.
Except
Dial of Destiny was late. It was late June. It was late June. Yeah, late June. I like to do this. I like to look at the box office in this week. And this came out the opening weekend, 126.9 million, debuted at number one. That's huge, even for 2008 numbers. Second place this week, in its second week, 29.8 million. The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, the second one in that franchise, which I actually like.
Time for CJ.
I actually like the second one too. Yeah, I like it too, Nathan.
I do this franchise, and it always kind of made me sad that this did not continue. But it ran out of steam.
Well, we're getting the Greta one, right?
Isn't Greta one?
Isn't Greta Gerwig doing Narnia? Isn't that her next project?
She might have been in like the Silver Chair or the Silver Fox or some
Silver
other
Chair is one of the books in the franchise, like the fourth or fifth one, I forget. But I don't know. Are they continuing this, or is this being rebooted? Because
I think it's a reboot.
Well, the Silver Chair is like the fourth or fifth book.
Yeah, that would be a new one. I don't know.
Anyways, coming in third place, 26.9 million. His fourth week was Iron Man. In fourth, in its third week, earning 11.3 million. What Happens in Vegas? In fifth place, 5.2 million. Third week of release is Speed Racer. Number 6, 4.2 million. Maid of Honor. Number 7, 4.2 million. Baby Mama. Never saw it.
Man, I remember these.
And number 8, I actually did see this one, probably a week on either side of this. 2.2 million for Getting Sarah Marshall. Number 9, in its fifth week, 1.1 million. Harold and Kumar, Escape from Guantanamo Bay. And number 10
you guys have that one in the vault, right?
When we get to it, no doubt, all three of them will be. Number 10 was The Visitor with 940,000, which was a good film. This is the only movie, I think, in the entire franchise not to get nominated for any Academy Awards, but it did win a Golden Raspberry for worst prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel. I hate talking about Razzies. I think it's the worst thing ever. I don't have any other real notes here. I'm sorry, notes. I don't have any other trivia. I saw that one of the titles they thought for this was Indiana Jones and the Atomic Ants was an early title for this movie.
God. Awful,
yeah. And Spielberg had reservations about making light about Nazis after directing Schindler's List, which is one of the reasons why Russians were written as the enemy in this film. So, all right. I don't really have much else, but let's begin. B, what did you think of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
My first time watching this one, and I dialed into Destiny right after. So comparatively, this movie rocks. I thought. So now I've officially seen all of the Indiana Jones movies. I'm done. It's been a great adventure.
You're gonna have to go into the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles or whatever it's called next.
Okay. So I'm of two minds with this movie. I think there's juice here that totally recaptures the magic. And I like a lot of the goofy action stuff. I like the femme fatales. I like the man-eating ants. I love the quicksand. I like, even when Marion's back, I find that there's a lot of the action sequences, especially in the first half, where I really feel like they're just in the pocket and it's super fun. But then there's some stuff that feels really divorced from the original franchise. And we'll get into the aliens and stuff like that, but this isn't a franchise that, to me, that really feels beholden to either its previous iterations or realism. So it going mystical for me wasn't a problem that I think it was for some other people. It's kind of done that. So I thought that was all right. But it's more just that we seem to kind of lose who I thought Indy was as a character a couple of times. He's not someone who I would have thought of was not a fan of the moon landing. I was like, oh, I totally thought he would have been all about that. And some of the performances just ring a little. I'm not sure what Kate's doing, but I love her. So I'm glad to see her, but I'm not really sure what's going on with that performance. And the John Hurt character, they just felt a little flatly written. It's not even so much their performances. I mean, these are amazing actors. They're not bringing stuff. They just sort of feel like there's threads that are started and then they get lost once they get to Peru. I think the first half of this movie is really strong, but I thought the triple cross or it was never a double cross, and which was a way more eloquent way to put it than I had in my mind, which was triple cross, was superfluous. I didn't think we needed it, but more than anything being bad, it just felt a little hollow. I thought some of the set pieces like that, for me, that's what makes these movies so special. Some of it just looked a little plasticky and a little CGI. I didn't love all of that, but really, and even Shia LaBeouf, it's not that he was bad. It's not that it just, he didn't have a lot to do, there just wasn't a lot to that. And it could have been, and I hate to talk about a movie for what it could have been or should have been, but there's the emotional spine of that movie where it's now Indy's the dad and he's tagging along his son. Now the son's kind of the everyman character is such an interesting through line from Last Crusade that just isn't given as much integrity as it is in the other one.
100%.
I had a great time watching this, especially the first half, but it started to fall a little flat as the movie went on for me. But I like that these are movies that take risks. I like that these are movies that go big, and I would 100% watch it again. For me, it's probably like a 3.5. I don't know. I liked it.
All right.
Out of 5?
Out of 5.
Out of 5. Not out of 10. No, I liked it way more than that.
Okay. Anthony, I cannot wait because the work on this, I know you can be impartial about this, but I'd love to know. After you put all those hours of hard work into this, the fruits of your labor.
Oh, yeah. Almost falling asleep on the highway and all that stuff. Yeah. A little bit of sleep each night.
Were you rewarded?
I was very disappointed.
Oh.
I was I remember I went with all my family and friends, and we all went to the theater when it came out. And
you took your name off the movie after.
My name got out of it. Thank God I have more seats. A number of things took me out, and it's taken me like through the years to figure out exactly what it was. I did go in with extremely high expectations. I mean, because when I was working on it, it felt like an Indiana Jones movie, and it felt like, oh my God, this is going to be great. It really felt good. And, we didn't get off to a great start with the friggin' groundhog mountain.
The CGI groundhog, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that was like the first indication. This movie, it sometimes feels like a parody of an Indiana Jones movie. It's almost tongue-in-cheek making fun of itself, starting with that. And so I remember just being like, oh no. I really enjoyed it. And I was like, I remember just edging my seat, like, all right, let's just keep this going. Because the fridge bothered me, which we don't even have to really get into, but that fridge scene, everything in Indiana Jones is completely believable. That just seems a little, the whole movie,
it spawned a phrase. What was it? Nuke the fridge, this movie.
Yeah.
We've replaced nuke the fridge. We replaced Jump the Shark with Nuke the Fridge because of this
fridge. It's just.
I didn't think the fridge was any worse than the plane jumping out of the plane and I mean,
jumping out of the plane was absolutely great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was not CGI either. Yeah. This was terrible CGI. Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime this movie went into like cartoon world, it lost its magic for me.
Yeah.
So once we go to Hawaii, that's where the majority of problems are for me. And as we go through the scenes and whatnot, we can talk about that. But it's almost like 2 different movies. And the plot is almost like 5 different movies. And I know they took different stuff from different scripts. And then my other issues are like, I never felt like there were stakes. I never felt like, oh my God, please don't let the Russians get the skull. It never felt like that was going to be some like terrible moment. There was just no stakes in this. And because it's tough to follow up Nazis. What are you going to get that's like worse as far as like a historical sort of group of villains, So I think that, and the movie just weighed it down in some politics at different points. And I really wasn't sure what it was trying to say. So it just was like convoluted in some different ways. And so, I have a lot more, but I'm not going to go on and on and on about hating it. It was okay. Now, one thing I do want to bring up is my kids loved it. When we went through and did what you guys are doing here, my kids loved it. And you seem to like it more. So I'm wondering if there's a generational thing where this younger generation has a little more stomach for some of the cartoony stuff, or maybe isn't as, because they didn't grow up with the like more grittier celluloid versions, all practical effects, that it doesn't sting them.
No, the effects are not what's winning me over in this movie.
Or maybe they don't bother you as much.
Maybe. I mean, I'm giving it the same rating I gave Temple. So I don't know. Just for different reasons. It's just for different reasons.
Close. Yeah.
But it's just for different reasons, right? Like, I prefer Temple to this movie. It's not that. It's that, I don't know. I just think they're cartoony in different ways. Like, I thought Temple pushed so far into what it put its characters through, and it just wouldn't stop. It was kind of relentless with that. And I feel like this is pushing so far into the Disneyfication kind of humor. Like, it's got a very Disney sense of humor to me, which I don't really love that part of it, but I thought some of the action-y stuff felt old indie, especially the first half, which I liked.
The monkeys, the waterfalls. I was like, it was like watching someone murder my friend when I was watching this. What are they doing? I liked your point about Shia. I thought he was really good in this movie, even again, like watching him, but I don't know that they didn't have anything to do with his character. I think they just had too many characters at the end to give stuff to do. And I think he got kind of washed away in that. And I would have liked to have seen more of him and Harrison interacting than everyone else and their brother along on the ride for this, that you're kind of like, oh, who are they again? What are they doing? So, but yeah, no, he was good. Also nice at the craft service table.
Oh, nice. Good.
Nice guy. Nice to the crew. But, I think I understand. So one thing, like any interview you watch, any making of anything, you see Steven Spielberg reiterate 1 million times how he didn't want to do this movie.
Yes.
And he obviously, and even one thing he said, he just like strung Lucas along and was like, yeah, we're going to do it, thinking it would never get made. And it was like very apparent, because I feel like he, kind of mailed it in a little bit. And I think he acquiesced Lucas too much.
Well, wasn't it also Harrison Ford that says this has to get done by 2008 or it's not happening at all? This was also pressure that he was putting on this whole thing.
Feels a little prequel-y to me.
Yes.
Yeah. Anthony, if you were to give this a rating 1 to 5 or 0 to 5, what would you give it?
So again, you're comparing it to other Indiana Jones movies, which is the only reason Temple of Doom didn't make your mini vault argument, which I wish I could take back. This film versus other films still has some redeeming qualities, but I guess I'd give it a 6 of 10.
Out of 5?
Of 10.
So like basically a 3 out of 5.
So then we have the same stomach for it. It's the same. For me, my line is like a 2.5 as I would rewatch it. That's average. It's a movie I would rewatch.
Yeah. All right. Sam, you're up.
So I just wanted to say on a humorous note, Anthony, if you guys have seen The Social Network, listening to your review. I just rewatched that. No, exactly. Like listening to your review, Anthony, I felt like you were Justin Timberlake and I was Jesse Eisenberg. Yes, exactly. Yes. Facebook is cool. And that's, and so let me just get into my notes right away. So I am really glad that I watched this movie again recently, because I was not going to. I was going to cheat and just go off my memory because I've seen it sometimes, but I knew I had to just have it very fresh. And the freshness helped because it helped me specifically identify my problems with it. I will say right off the bat and go for the jugular, this is my least favorite Indiana Jones film. I do not like Dial of Destiny that much, but what Dial of Destiny has that's admirable, even if not perfect, is it's a character piece about Indy's elderly days. And it's like his kind of final character moment, and it sort of puts that character to rest in a sense. I find Dial of Destiny's action very repetitive, dull.
I hated Dial.
Yeah, no, and I completely I sympathize with you, B, because I will not. I'm never going to defend Dial. But and when I say Dial of Destiny is better, I'm talking about not really by that much, but maybe it's because I love Steven Spielberg so much that the disappointment of this movie hurts more. Whereas Dial, I just saw and I was like, oh, hey, there's a train in it, cool, So here's the thing with this movie. It's what's interesting about it is Raiders and Temple and Last Crusade, even though the formula got more familiar, of their era, they were more cutting edge action movies of the time.
Yes.
And this is a film that comes out in 2008, 2 years after Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest, which
it looks worse.
It looks worse. And so I'm not the biggest fan of comparison. Yeah. Exactly. I'm not the biggest fan of Dead Man's Chest, but other action movies at that time were doing things that were more cutting edge for the aughts with stunts and physical things, even things like National Treasure. And I hate to admit it, but National Treasure, Book of Shadows, they're not great films, but they're somehow more timely. This movie is a very awkward hybrid between the grit of the past and modern CGI, and what we get is this muddy middle look. And I actually think that Janusz Kaminski's cinematography in this movie is incredibly bland because he's going against his gut and he's trying to make it look like the other indie movies. There was one review that said this picture has a very studio feel to it, where it's kind of hokey. And there are moments that are not terrible, but I feel that they're kind of off. I do agree, B. I think the first half is better than the second half. But I think another thing that I noticed on this viewing that I would have forgotten to mention had I skipped the film. I'm really glad I didn't, because I don't want to do a disservice to the audience. But David Koepp's script has so much awkward, clunky, expository dialogue laced all over the place. Anthony, you talk about 5 different plots going on at once. Raiders, I watched as a kid. I fully understood the plot of Raiders. Temple of Doom, there's more jokes, but it's so clear. Last Crusade, incredibly clear. This movie is so, and I'm just going to overdo it for the sake of making my point a little bit, but it's like, okay, so we're going to Area 51. Why? Well, because Indy, you were at Roswell, New Mexico, because there was something there and there's a thing there. And then, okay, so the Russians, so Irina Spalko is looking for artifacts all over the world for the Soviet Union. Okay, Shia LaBeouf shows up out of nowhere when Indy is getting on a train. Hey, you're the guy to talk to because my mom is friends with Ox Huxley, who knows you, and I need your help because there's a crystal skull that he went to the jungle to find, but now the skull is back in Peru and we have to go find the skull. And I am 43 years old. I watched this movie completely alert, and I literally had trouble following what the motivation was for certain set pieces. They go here, they go there, and it's like, what? And there's so many ideas. They're not bad, but even the dialogue, and B, like you were saying, all these great actors, they read these lines and it doesn't sound natural coming out of their mouths. Indiana Jones has a line where he's trying to decipher and he's like, well, wavy lines means the water, of course, and tears mean waterfall. And you're like, oh my God, I'm exhausted by it.
Can I just hop on this for a quick second? Because you're talking about something that I wanted to say here. This, one thing that we all praised in Temple, and we've all talked about over the first 3 movies, is that how great it is to have a movie that doesn't treat you like you're dumb, that drops you off in the middle of a story and just says, here's the middle of a story. And you know that you're with this character who's been living a whole life before you showed up. And this movie and Dial both treat you like a stupid cash grab.
Exactly. But ironically, in treating you stupidly and trying to explain everything, it actually makes me more confused as to what's going on. I will say one scene that I've always kind of liked that a lot of people really don't. It's not when they first show up in Peru, because that prison in that set looks very, very cheap to me. I do like when they go to the graveyard at night and those guys are coming out and because they go in and they look for the skulls. I kind of that scene breathes a little bit for me, which I enjoy. But and I think that the car chase scene in Connecticut, in New Haven, is probably the best set piece in the movie because it's all real. I mean, there's a scene when Harrison Ford or a stuntman comes out of the window of one car and gets on the motorcycle in camera, and you're like, oh my God, that looks incredibly dangerous.
It's the only stunt that really reminiscent of the stunts that we had from the first 3 movies, like the motorcycle chase from Crusade or the truck chase in Raiders. It brings us back to that tactile, tangible real stunt work. That's why.
And stakes,
I'm sure there was a lot of CGI in that as well, but it felt like we were in that world.
No, exactly. And so I really like that. And I think I really like these guys, Red Letter Media. They're on YouTube. Their stuff has like millions of views. They review this movie, and they're kind of all on the same page where they like the first half better than the second. They find the first half tolerable. When it gets to the jungle, I feel there's an opportunity for, it's the pacing of this movie is so weird because in Indiana Jones, you hear about where the Grail's resting site is or where they're going to find the Ark. And you watch these movies and you get excited to go to these places. And everything is so perfunctory once we get to the jungle. There's the vehicle chase with that incredibly bad CGI, like vine cutting giant truck. Compare that chase to the tank chase in Last Crusade, the truck chase in Raiders. I find the chase through the jungle so incoherent, not in a fun way, but in a bad way. I don't know who's on what vehicle, who's driving where. This is the one movie where the action, the way it's motivated is characters actually aggressively make decisions that I don't quite understand. Even as early on in the warehouse, the second Indiana Jones escaped the bad guys, Cate Blanchett gets in her truck and starts driving in the opposite direction. And I know she's trying to cut him off, but on screen it looks like they're just trying to space people out to elongate the scene. And there's these weird moments where Ray Winstone and Indy, their two cars are going to crash inside the warehouse. And he's like, "You don't know him. You don't know him." And they like says that line and he hammers that line. And you're like, well, whether you know him or not, like the car is coming. What is that? There's so many moments in this movie, and a perfect example of the way this movie feels to me. The third waterfall, they go off it. This huge shot where they fall out of the vehicle. The next shot, they are conveniently just chilling by water's edge, and they just will rise out of the thing. There isn't even a shot of them like tumbling around in the water. Like I literally have like continuity issues with it.
And Marion's like holding the steering wheel, giggling.
It's exactly. It's
what dumbs her down. Marion's character.
They dumb her down. And when that scene, my least favorite is when she drives off the cliff onto the tree, and the tree like flies up and hits the Russians on the cliff. Yeah. I'm like,
that was her intention to do
Disney
that.
Violence.
No,
Disney
violence.
violence.
It's such Disney violence.
Acme cartoon.
I know that Indiana Jones movies, like they're never realistic. It's about suspending disbelief, but this movie doesn't even try to. It doesn't even. It's like Anthony was saying. It feels like a parody somehow. And I'll say kind of like when I like the idea of Akator. I like when they get to the bottom of the waterfall and they look up and they see like a skull face in the cliffside. But that's just a bland shot, and the CGI setup. There's no reveal. I mean, I felt such a feeling when I was going into the temple at the end of Last Crusade, or even that shot in Temple of Doom when they come around the corner and they see the spectacular fiery set with the lava for the first time. There's this kind of like, whoa, this awe to it. This movie doesn't have that. I'm going to stop talking. I will just say, all great actors, not given a lot to do. Ray Winstone is a great actor, but his character, all the double crossing, is so tedious. I didn't even care whether he was a good guy or bad guy. I was like, take your gold, take your stuff, get the hell out of here. And then at the end, when he's like, Indy, I'll be all right, and he winks. It's like, what do you mean? You're about to get sucked into that. None of his lines, they don't make sense to me. And so I'll say this. I understand from a story point of view, George Lucas's original concept of trying to take this franchise into 50s B sci-fi is interesting. I think if this feels like a second draft of a script. I think if they'd stripped it down and focused it and streamlined it and introduced the jungle earlier and gone with more practical effects, I think it could have been stronger.
Given it Spielberg's emotional spine. That's what needed.
Exactly. It's like I could feel like Spielberg did it as as allegiance to his lifelong friend, but you could tell he's kind of not into it. I will end by saying I'll say that the one compliment, Spielberg always has good camera angles, and there's a lot of Spielberg camera moves in this film that are missing from Dial of Destiny. But my final rating would be a 2.5, and I'd give the extra half a star just for the fact that it reminds me of better Indiana Jones films. But that's my review. Yeah.
Wow, 2.5, Sam. That seems generous for after that.
Honestly, you know what? 2. I'm going to take the half a star off. It's a 2-star film for me. It really is. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It literally makes you angry.
It makes me upset, not upset. I watched it last night and I got through it. And then I read Tolkien for 45 minutes afterward because I got to get this taste out of my mouth. I need to read something that's good. Yeah.
I read something amusing earlier today, and it's not a real secret about Shia LaBeouf. He was really, is that how you say it? LaBeouf? I don't know, whatever. He was very critical of both himself, Spielberg, and the film after its release. And there's a great Harrison Ford. He was quoted saying this, and I want to read it here because this is just beautiful. I think he was a fucking idiot. As an actor, I think it's my obligation to support the film without making a complete ass of myself. I love that.
I love that.
Yeah. So as a diehard fan of Raiders and Crusade, going into this, I was ready to love this movie. And you know what? The first time I watched this, I thought it was pretty decent. But it may have been because I was so thirsty for a new indie adventure from this franchise. It may have been the same feeling I got after watching Phantom Menace. It's where you walk out, I'm like, that was good, right? Right? You got Star Wars, it was great, right? And
that's how you felt walking out of Phantom Menace, huh?
It's right. Yeah, because I remember a lot of people walked out. And then 72 hours later, it was like, really? No, that wasn't good, was it? But we walked out wanting to love it so much. I got that feeling, and I had that feeling for several years actually, because I was primed to have a good time no matter what. However, until I rewatched this, I think a year ago, because I was prepping for Dial of Destiny. But the thing is, I had absolutely no urge to go back to this movie, and that probably speaks volumes because I rewatched the first 3 movies many, many times. But I'll start with a couple of good things. It's been mentioned before already. I think the opening of this, actually the first 40 minutes or so of this film are really good, really great. I love everything that's happening in the desert, the New York locations. I think it's really strong stuff. I have no problems with I never had a problem with the fridge or any of that. I thought I was having a great time with everything up to that point. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. I don't think this
Nathan, you're probably not used to the grit of the older movies,
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't think this is a bad film. It's doing so many things that we expect from an Indiana Jones adventure, but it almost feels Lucas and Spielberg got together and really tried hard to take the idea of what an Indiana Jones adventure film was and distill it down to its core iconography. And that's what we got. Crystal Skull lacks we've talked about the tactile feeling of those first 3 films. Other than the opening scene out in the desert, nearly this entire film in New York scenes, everything feels like it was shot on a soundstage. Thus, we don't really feel like we go anywhere. And that's a problem. The characters, and the other thing is the characters in this film, I think, are a combination of both really thinly written, but also making some poor choices. Mutt, the Shia LaBeouf character, he swings in like he's auditioning for Rebel Without a Cause or The Wild One.
Right. Yeah.
But there are so many missed opportunities with fleshing out his backstory. Mm-hmm. And we're coming off this wonderful father-son story with Sean Connery and Harrison Ford. And this is doing nothing even close to creating that father-son bonding story, which it could have done if it wanted to, but it has no interest in that.
It felt like that was just there to get Marion back.
Yes. And she does nothing in this movie. Ray Winstone, we've already talked about that. Again, a character who could have been a really complex, conflicted character, about where his allegiances are. But this movie, again, has no interest in that and treats him like a buffoon, not just a turncoat, but just a buffoon. And after he backstabs Indy. So, and you remember how in Raiders and in Last Crusade, the Nazis were terrifying, but also kind of fun villains.
Yes.
And Cate Blanchett's character, I don't know what her motivation is. It's like, well, you're angry all the time and you have a sword. I don't know what else there was to her.
Honestly, that's usually enough for me with Kate, but it's just not working for me in this movie.
And I'll keep this really short because we've gone along with a lot of everybody else here. The worst part is the music. John Williams' score in the original trilogy was so iconic. It's like they forgot to invite him to the party until the closing credits. I don't think I heard the classic Indiana sweeping score until the credits rolled. I don't remember it at all.
Or are you kidding me? That music during the car sword fight was incredible, and to hum it. Wow. No, it sucked. Yeah.
I'm negative on a lot of things, but I still don't think this is a really terrible film. I don't mind the plot at all, which has been a dumping ground for the last 16 years. By the way, these are not aliens. These are interdimensional beings. Let's get that on the record right now.
That's true. And no, because George really wanted Steven to do aliens, and Steven didn't want to do aliens. And George said, well, Steven, what if there were interdimensional beings? And then Steven was like, kind of like aliens. Fine, George.
I want to circle back to the interdimensional beings when you're done, Nathan.
I don't have anything else. It's not great. It's not terrible. But I'm just giving it a 2.5, and I'll get into more later. But that's all I have to say for now.
Not terrible.
I need to trust. Oh, I'll say really quick. To trust my gut, and I was trying to be a hard ass, but I have to go back to my original 2.5 because that's what I first thought in my mind. And also, I always like aliens. I want to like aliens. I'm fascinated by those mysteries. So for me, there's that, and Spielberg still has some camera work that I will always love. So I just got to go back to my initial 2.5 because it's a little better than 2 stars, just a smidgen. But I'm on the same page anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it's the worst movie ever made. It is interesting to me, like one of my favorite Spielberg movies, and I don't know if this is like a wildly crazy opinion, but I love AI, and it's crazy that this movie comes out after AI. Like 7 years after AI, because I think AI does artificial intelligence and robots so well and does all of that. And it's so interesting. And I don't feel like this captures any of that magic.
Well, I feel like because that was a Stanley Kubrick project that Spielberg almost had permission to go dark. And I think if he had done it on his own, he might not have gone so dark. But because he was doing it as a favorite of a friend there, he went dark. But I don't know. Every time I want to like this movie, I think of the quicksand scene that could have been shot in Spielberg's backyard, and that fake
it's
rubber
it's such an 80s or 90s trope as well. Like quicksand is such low-hanging fruit also for this kind of film. It's like something that like Steven Spielberg as a teenager would think that's kind of a cool thing to put in a movie.
But it is unbelievable. It felt and looked so cheap and low budget, and it's I feel like they picked that up, and once they
the set felt like it had no depth to it. It really, you're absolutely right, Anthony. It looks like
it's small.
It looks small. It doesn't look like there's any scale to anything that's in these scenes.
I would rather watch Stephen Sommers' The Mummy Returns than this film. Like with its high octane CGI craziness, it's more fun for me. I like
Sam,
it.
Tell me your opinions on Scorpion King.
He looked terrible, but that whole buildup, I had a lot of fun watching it. But the cheapness of this one, it's the. Did anyone notice that shot when there's the truck chasing the jungle, and there's literally a row of trees, and 5 people with machine guns are shooting at Harrison Ford. He's 5 feet from them, and he jumps onto the truck right when they run out of bullets. It's just too, I know Indiana Jones is not like realistic, but it's just like, even in Raiders, you know, he takes a bullet in the shoulder in the truck chase. This movie, he has 5 machine guns shooting, and it's just like airless. Yeah.
It's not that they're unrealistic. They're just realistic enough. The other films.
Yeah.
It doesn't ask you to take a bridge that far. It's just like, all right, yes, that's probably implausible, but they only go this far. I feel like this movie makes you go this far. And you said earlier about Acme. It is like an Acme cartoon, Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, you know,
slapstick
ones from Rocky and Bullwinkle. I can see where George wanted to take this and plop this down into 50s B sci-fi, but it's not a mystical. The mystical side that's so cool, the historic mystery of Indiana Jones is the cool part that brings you in. There's a little bit of truth to these stories, the Holy Grail, the Ark, and even that.
I don't mind the fantastical part. The aliens or interdimensional beings don't bother me at all. I could have Indy go anywhere. I don't mind. Indy could go to space. I would not care. The writing of this is, and the ideas that just go nowhere are, I think, the real problem with this. Like these aliens, like these skulls. Sam, you mentioned this before, where we have aliens. We have the Roswell crash. We have this alien that's in this warehouse. We have aliens that crashed in Russia. We have these aliens in the Amazon, and there's no like, how do these all relate to each other? Why do the Russians want this? The crystal skull, are they in every single alien? Magnetic properties, they're not consistent throughout this movie, and it's. Are the aliens that are in the Amazon? Is it
cool,
one
like
alien?
Exactly. That's the problem, because the movie tries to explain it in these expository dialogue chunks where they spew out this data, and you're like, all right, let me pause and rewind and see if I can catch all of that. There's so much.
I'd argue that situationally, a lot of Indiana Jones movies do try to make you go that far. Like, they are almost this unrealistic a lot of the time, but the characters are really grounded in reality. And the characters in this movie just felt totally two-dimensional. And then there's no stakes, like you talked about, Anthony. Then there's nothing that brings you back down to a real conversation or real people in these wild situations. It's just like unbelievable people in unbelievable situations doing unbelievable things, and it loses the plot.
No, totally. And the physics are just too nuts in this movie. Like when they're riding along the side of a cliff way above the Amazon, the whole cliff is CG. None of them are there. And I'm like, oh, can I please go to the desert with Raiders where there's like real trucks and they're driving and he gets shot in the shoulder and there's like blood. Or Last Crusade when a real stuntman rides a horse above the tank and the guy jumps off and lands. There's a physicality to it, where in this, it's like, we're going to drive off a cliff, and Marion is like going to laugh. The only moment that I felt mild physicality was
they use more models.
Shot in their head.
They use more models in the earlier movies too, so it was real practical, things that you were seeing on screen, like the tank going toward the cliff, it felt more real, versus that Jeep going along the side of a cliff in this movie. Because I'm guessing that was not, I don't know if that was a real cliff in Crusade or not, but it felt like that was something that they were approaching, was really happening.
Yeah.
And why is it different here?
Here's a dumb point of contention. Everybody was so dry in this movie. Everybody's so sweaty in the first 3 movies, and I really like that. And then we come into the aughts, and everybody's very demure.
I would even go as far as say that Harrison Ford in this film feels kind of taciturn, and he's kind of like Indy, but he's more like, rah, rah, rah. When I saw Force Awakens, I felt like he was more. I felt that like Harrison Ford in Force Awakens, I felt Han Solo in that film felt more like Han Solo than Indiana Jones in this film. Like, they're 2 totally different franchises. But you talk about a Star Wars movie coming out years later. Force Awakens feels like the next chapter. This just felt kind of like,
and just another example of where it went wrong is like we always have that gross out moment in these previous films. Again, I don't know. We keep comparing these movies, but you have to. Raiders, we had the infamous snakes scene, and we had bugs, and Temple of Doom, we had rats, and Crusade. And in this movie, we have a little scene where CGI scorpions are running up Mutt's arm, and it looks really bad. And there's nothing like that it compares to those first 3 movies in this movie. So
I think there's a real case to be made. And I really understand why Harrison Ford wanted to make another one. If I was him and I loved that role, I would love to do more Indiana Jones. I think there's a real case to be made for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade ending the trilogy and that being it. After that point, these 2 movies years later, it's like, ugh. I just feel like Last Crusade, the characters literally ride off into the sunset and he's reunited with his father and it's the perfect ending. And then you have these 2 more films. It's like, why do they exist? Well, I mean, they made the Dial of Destiny didn't do well, but Crystal Skull did. So I get it.
Well, any other comments on Crystal Skull?
There's some redeeming stuff in this movie. I liked the first half. To the monkey. No, it was, even if these weren't great characters, I thought it was great. It was great to see John Hurt on screen. And I don't, like seeing all of these actors that I love interacting with each other. I liked seeing Indy just at it again, like at the end of the day, what I rewatched is, I want to see Indiana Jones do cool shit, sure. That's fine. Especially the first half of this movie, I thought was worth watching.
I felt some emotion at the wedding scene. That was nice,
See, I didn't like that. I was like this, and I've said this before, I think Indiana Jones has an endings problem. I think Last Crusade's the only one to stick the landing on the ending.
I didn't mind the wedding. I did like the fact that, there's always there's the moment where the doors open, the wind blows the hat in. You think that maybe the torch is being passed down to Mutt, but nope, not today, kid. Indy grabs it from him and he puts it on. I think it's a fitting ending.
I do think Raiders has an incredible. I mean, I love the ending of Raiders with after all that it goes into the vault. Like for me, the ending Raiders is like just perfection. Yeah.
I like the tent scene in this movie, the interrogation scene where he's there and then Kate gets to show off a little bit of her psychic powers. I thought that was fine.
Were there psychic powers? I think it goes to show just the lack of follow
through
with the story. Like what are the powers of this skull? I felt like it was not really fleshed out. Was it having an effect on Indy? I don't know. Apparently it had an effect on Ox, but did he do it to himself? Did Arena have anything? I don't know.
It's very muddy.
It's very confusing.
I liked the idea conceptually of the interdimensional beings in general, but they're not fleshed out. And I like the idea of that last shot when they're up on the cliff and like the big spinning discs rises up into the sky. But what's hilarious about it is everyone is standing right there and like boulders are just spinning around. Any of these things could drop on them and crush them. And they're just standing there totally, no, we're not going to get hit. And but the sky is filled with debris. If that was me, I'd be like, fuck. And I'd watch from cover. But Indy's just going to look at this. Yeah.
This is yet another reason why I didn't find a single satisfying death in this movie. There's a lot of good kills throughout this franchise. And this movie had like none of them. I didn't care about.
I think on Red Letter Media, they said that Indiana Jones doesn't directly kill anyone in this movie. He punches people out and they fall into ants, but this is the least
into ants.
Indy,
I do like that death.
Kills a lot of people in Temple of Doom and Raiders.
And Crusade, I think is the highest.
His bullet goes through 10 Nazis on a tank. Yeah.
Crusade, he is a brawler. He kills a lot. I think he's got the highest kill count.
Yeah. This movie's not got any kills for any villains. Like when Kate died, I was like, fine. That's fine.
All right. Well, shall we take a break and get back to our decisions on the vault?
Yeah, tough call.
All right. So thanks to everyone joining us today. We really appreciate you. Don't let the theme of our show fool you. We are all about connecting with our listeners, and we love to hear your thoughts on the films we discuss. If you've seen Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and want to share your opinion, send us an email at backtotheframerate.com. at gmail.com. We might even read it on the podcast. You can also chime in on our social media, on our socials at Back to the Frame Rate with your thoughts on the show and the movies we cover. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, YouTube, and Twitter. And yeah, definitely word of mouth is the best way of helping us reach a larger audience. And we'd be really grateful if you could take a moment and tell people about our podcast. So we thank you all in advance. Okay, let's get to our big decision on whether Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is going to be saved or purged into the fiery apocalypse. So, B, what say you?
Let it go.
Just like Frozen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another movie I didn't like. So.
All right. You're going to say purge it.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony?
Listen, if you wouldn't let me save Temple of Doom, I'm not letting anyone save it.
You have a right.
You were just outvoted.
You told me how small that vault was, and I let it go.
Anthony's going to make his own vault with blackjack and hookers.
I already have that.
Anthony, are you sure that you and I aren't like brothers from another mother? Because I feel a brother to you. Yeah.
You go so
in the words of Paul McCartney to this film, I would say, "Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Don't let it in the vault because it's not good enough."
All right, Nathan, your vote doesn't count, but if it did, what would you vote?
No. This is lower tier Indiana Jones. So not going to let it in. Nope. That is unanimous.
Slam the door.
Very satisfying.
This was a very therapeutic recording.
I feel like you got some stuff out, Sam.
Yeah, you worked out some issues.
I did. The Temple of Doom recording definitely hurt me. So this is come back, feel more validated, Oh, good times.
And that is going to end our show today. No other topics today. But Anthony, thank you again for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me again. Very fun.
Past and future guest.
Yeah. Is there anywhere people can find you or your? I think IMDb, you said, is the best place for people to find you and your work, right?
Yeah. IMDb for film work.
I will put that in the show notes.
Okay. Or you could just stand by Haven Brothers in Providence, Rhode Island, like 24 hours a day, and maybe he'll show up.
Maybe
if one of you Rhode Islanders want to get me like a coffee Oreo milkshake stat, I'd be fucking down for that.
And Anthony, I apologize. That was a very dumb joke. I just came up with it because I went to Haven Brothers with you once and I thought it would be funny, but it didn't land. So I apologize.
I mean, I put my order in, so
nobody's going to get it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So
if anyone's interested, the team I'm coaching, Coventry Little League, ages 7 and 9, will be in the playoffs next week. Root us on.
We're rooting them on. Well, that is the show this week. Back to the Frame Rate is part of the Weston Media Podcast Network. We also wish to thank Brian Ellsworth for our show opening. On behalf of all of us, we bid you farewell from our fallout shelter. Your presence in our underground sanctuary is truly appreciated. We are truly sorry you cannot join us, but we want to express our gratitude for your company. If you are finding solace in our discussions, we kindly ask that you please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whichever portal connects to our broadcast. There, you can find more episodes of this podcast and also on our website, backtotheframerate.com. And on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, or any of those places at Back to the Frame Rate. Your support is the beacon of light that brightens our confined space. Until we emerge from the fallout, stay with us, keep hope alive, and keep those reviews coming. This is the end of our transmission. Back to the Framerate, signing off.
I want you to know it's over.